Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sasquatch Watch Radio with your host, Billy Willard, and the Blog Squatcher. Strap in, hold on tight, get ready, because it is about to go down.
Alrighty, everybody, it's that time again. Time for another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is April 27th, 2009. Hopefully I'm coming in loud and clear now. I finally bought me a new phone system. Knew everybody was complaining about not being able to hear me and the bad connection and static problems. So hopefully this phone is a lot better, and I hope y'all can hear me a lot better. Not that anybody really worries about what I say, but, you know. But
yes, they do. Everybody is all ears for you.
So what's going on with my great co-host, Mr. Blog Squatcher over there?
Well, not much. And yes, your phone line does sound good. So that's good. One technical problem down.
Right.
Hopefully we don't get another one.
That's right. Oh, well, work it one thing at a time. So how are you doing, DB? Do you have any news, or you no news tonight? Or
I do have a couple of items of news that I stumbled upon.
Okay.
They're little short things. The first thing that I found, it's really not about. I'm gonna say this is like this lady really exists, but I don't think that they really know for sure. They're seeing a nun in the mountains in Austria. And they think that it's a nun who has kind of like gone into the caves for meditation purposes, and she doesn't want to talk to anybody. So when she sees people, she leaves. So they're seeing her fleetingly, and they've actually searched for her, and they can't find her, which made me, make the comment that if an intelligent creature doesn't want you to find them, and they know they know the area where they're hiding, they're going to be pretty good at staying away.
Right.
So, you can make an analogous case to a Bigfoot with that, even though a Bigfoot and a nun are pretty different, but, they're both intelligent creatures.
We would hope so.
Yeah. So, they can't find this nun in the mountains in Austria, even though they know that she's there. So right. I thought that was kind of entertaining. And the other thing is just plain entertainment, and that is that, you know all about Jack Links, right? The Jack Links commercials. Yeah, everybody loves those commercials. Well, what they've done now is they've made a website, which I'll read off here. It's an easy one, livingsasquatch.com. If you go to that website and watch a short little movie, it will show you how you can make your own 3D movie of a Sasquatch. And it's a really simple thing. I mean, it's not very complicated at all. All you're really doing is holding a card, which you print out, and the card has some feet on it, and then you hold that in front of your camera, and then a Sasquatch will seem to be standing there on that card and doing things. And so, the rest of the movie is filming you, whatever you're doing, and then the Sasquatch does stuff. I haven't done it myself, but it does look like it could be slightly entertaining at least.
Well,
so if people are interested in checking that out, it's at livingsasquatch.com. And
Very
that's
cool.
it for the news.
Good deal. Well, everyone, we have a great show tonight. I've been really excited about this show because if anyone reads DB's blog that he does called Blog Squatcher, of course, you read a story that DB had wrote up about a fellow by the name of Dave out of Kentucky. Well, it's a very, very intriguing story. When I first read it, I was getting ready to go to work, and I was late for work because I couldn't quit reading. So I think everyone's going to enjoy this show tonight. Everybody's going to enjoy because we have Dave with us on the show tonight, and he's going to talk to us a little bit. And Dave, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And we're surprised you're here.
Well, I'm glad to be anywhere, actually. Yes, I'm actually calling you from a hospital bed.
That's what I was going to tell you, to let everyone know where you're calling from.
But I'm on the mend, and I should be out tomorrow.
Okay.
What got me here is far scarier than any Bigfoot story I could possibly tell. So I'm happy to be alive, and
that's good.
Feeling much better.
Good, very good. Well, thank you. I know it's a pretty rare circumstance that you're in there, so we appreciate you still coming on the show. But my understanding is you're probably a little bored anyway.
Yeah. Been looking at TV too many nights already. So.
I know. Well, thanks for coming on the show. First of all, I guess the first question that we like to ask everybody is, did you have an interest in this creature? I mean, were you researching this creature when you had your sighting?
I was.
Okay.
Like most people, I guess, who are involved in this whole field, it goes back to childhood, and had a lifelong interest going back to seeing a lot of the same movies everybody else grew up seeing, like Legend of Boggy Creek and things like that. And I also had a very keen interest in zoology, and kind of grew up with these two interests, and was pretty intensively into it for a lot as a kid, and then kind of got away from it in my early adult years, and got more interested in when the internet scene came back up. But there was a long history in this area where my family had a farm of sightings over the years, and we started to experience some odd things a few years ago on our farm, which is not far from the location where I had my sighting. And when things started to heat up down there about a year ago, it was a really good opportunity to look into things, and a lot more happened than I thought would occur.
Right. All right. Well, y'all ain't going to believe this, but we've already got like 2 callers on the line. We haven't even gotten started yet. Let me just make sure these folks aren't just tuning in to listen. So let me just double check here real quick. Area code 571. Is that you, Jason?
That's me, Billy.
All right, I'll put you on mute.
All right.
All right, and then this other one I don't recognize, so let me see who that is. Area code 651. You're on the air.
You don't recognize it because it's the elusive number from the elusive one. I just called it this thing, guys, because I'm having troubles here with Blog Talk. So if I do have a question or anything like that, I'll cue the host.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. I'll put him back on mute. Okay, just had to get that out of the way. All right, DB, I'm going to let you pretty much handle this interview tonight because you and Dave have communicated with one another, and I know that you've done a lot of interviewing with him. So I'm going to let you handle this tonight.
So you're going to make me do it again?
I'm going to let yeah, exactly.
I already interviewed him. All right, well, that's fine with me. And there really isn't that much to do. I mean, once he gets rolling on the story just takes off. So let's get started with that story. You were just talking about how you had an interest already. And yes. I remember you saying that you had you'd found an area where someone had either had a sighting or they'd heard something. What was it that brought you?
A report came my way late last summer about a woman who was in this area who had been driving down a road that actually becomes a bridge over a lake in south central Kentucky. And when she looked across the bridge, she saw what she immediately recognized to be a Bigfoot crossing the road. And she saw something cross the road I think it crossed all the way across the road, but as she slowed down, it walked back into the center of the road and was just looking at her. And this was around, I think, 5:30 in the evening on us. It was May. It was almost a year ago, I think. And she was pretty unsettled by what she was seeing, and as she slowed down, she got a pretty good look at it. It was a man-sized, covered in hair, with very long arms, and it was doing that typical kind of activity where it was kind of just swaying its arms back and forth as it looked at her. And she was slowing down, and as she slowed down, it finally decided they would go ahead and cross into the woods on the right side, and she went on her way. And by her estimate, I think she looked at it for about 2 minutes or so from the first time she sighted it at the top of the hill to the point that it crossed into the woods. And when I saw where this location was, it was pretty exciting. This was by the roads. It runs about 11 to 12 miles from our farm. As the crow flies, it's only about 7 miles. So it was relatively close to our property, where I, heard some odd things and seen some odd things before. But and I remembered this place. So we used to do some fishing in that area when I was a kid, and it's a very large man-made lake. Most of the large lakes in Kentucky are man-made lakes, and it's a recreation area, and it's also a wildlife management area. And I decided I would just go check this out. It was very clear and apparent where this sighting had been, and I did so. I drove up there one evening and crossed the bridge, and pretty much right where she described this creature crossing into the woods, there is a pull-off, sort of a turnaround on the side of the road. And I pulled into the area, and it struck me as immediately it's kind of an interesting area because there was a lot of refuse and a lot of dumping going on. That's the unfortunate part. This is a very beautiful part of the country, but like what goes on in a lot of rural areas, people find a bluff, and they just start chucking stuff over the bluff. Mm-hmm. A lot of wood debris and things like that, and I started to notice that when I looked around, underneath my feet, I was walking on a lot of bone. And there was a lot of fragmented bone all in this area, too. Anything from just small mammals like raccoons to birds. And I stumbled across, a little closer to the edge of the bluff, what looked like the remains of a very, very young deer, I would say, a fawn. And this was all just strewn about. And I could see that there was a path that led pretty directly from the top of this bluff down to the water line of the lake. And it was all on rock. It was all on solid stone. And it had been worn, and obviously from people moving up and down through that area fishing over the years, too. But as I moved down the path, I could see there were bones strewn down the path as well. Some of them older looking, some of them newer looking. Just a lot of refuse thrown around. And I remember being the day I first investigated it. It was kind of getting kind of late, so I didn't go down to the shore of the lake. I decided to come back at a later time. And I ended up coming back at a later time, and the place was very intriguing. And I had a lot of free time on weekends around this period. This was last September. So I ended up spending essentially a couple of weekends scouting out that area. Went down all the way to the water line, and it was obviously as far as I could tell, it was the clearest path directly to the water. Anyone or anything that was going to get a drink was going to move down this path. Otherwise, it's just woods and bramble and a lot of rock and stone. And I could see evidence that people had fished, but not for a while. But there was traffic on the lake. There were boats and fishermen around, but it wasn't very heavy. It had been kind of late in the season. And the last trip that I think I took a trip in August, and then later in September, and then September 27th was a Saturday. I went down, spent some time just hanging out in the area, and it was very quiet. It was surprisingly quiet that day. And I'd had a game cam with me, which I'd used on the farm a couple of times to try to catch something. And decided, well, it was a quiet enough day, and all the time I was there, which is like 3 or 4 hours, no one had come down this path. I decided it would be worthwhile to go ahead and strap the game cam up to monitor this path, because anybody that would be coming down, if they were, bipedal, if they were a human or anything else, they would be of sufficient height to set this off. And I also just didn't want anybody walking off with it. I thought, well, if a fisherman walks by and a game cam goes off in his face, who knows if he'll take it or not. So I decided to wait till it was just about dark and set up the game cam and leave, and I did. and went home to the farm. Our home is not actually there, but we do own that property. We were having a family reunion that week, and we're actually having 2 family reunions on Sunday. And my plan was to get up early, very early on Sunday, and get down there and get the cam before anybody else would be headed in that direction. And woke up pretty early. It was probably around 5 o'clock. And decided to get up. My mom was already up. She has trouble sleeping. And she already making his breakfast downstairs. And we noticed, I looked out, and it was extremely foggy. And it does get foggy down there, but this was literally one of the foggiest days I've ever seen in this region. And she just kind of joked and quipped with me about, you really don't want to go down there this morning because you know something's going to happen if you do. And that was actually, it turned out to be a pretty ironic statement. But I said, well, I do have to get my property, and I wanted to come back because we were going to visit these two reunions later in the day. So went out and got in the car. I drive a Honda Element, and started her up and went down the road. And as soon as I hit the main state road that heads towards this area, the sun was up, but it was so just clouded over with fog. It was very, very dark. And there were points on this road where it was literally almost hand in front of your face darkness. And then I'd run into a clear patch, and there'd be the sun and the sky and everything else. And it takes about 11, 12 miles to get to this area. Pulled off. It stayed foggy pretty much up until I got into the town, and then veered off towards this region next to the lake. And it's clear for a while. Then as I got near the lake, obviously that draws a lot of fog. And it was pretty foggy in that area too, pretty socked in. And decided to just go ahead and go on up, and got to the turnoff, crossed the bridge, parked pretty much the spot that I normally did. And I had not seen anything in any of my trips up there. A couple trips back, I'd heard something hit the water once, and I'd actually talked to a fisherman about it because we couldn't figure out what it was. But I'd never seen anything, and the place didn't have a real sense of foreboding or menace to it. And I think, as I mentioned,
how about in the fog? Did it have a sense of foreboding and menace when the fog was there?
It was a little, it was a little odd, but this area where I had to go, it was literally just, 100 steps down, maybe the bluff. It's not that far. Mm-hmm. And it was just very quiet. It was very early on a Sunday morning. And as I think I mentioned, and you wrote in your piece, I do normally go out armed when I'm in the field down in that area, and it's not because I'm out to shoot a Bigfoot or something. It's more because I'm out to protect myself from anything else that might be out there, coyote and bear and other things out there. And I had been wearing it the day before when I was in another area, but didn't put it on that morning. I had it in the car. I had a belt with the gun, and actually I have a little, it's like a shotgun shell pouch that I actually could put my video camera in. But the camera had been stowed away and was actually going to go to the family reunion, and but the gun and everything was still sitting on the driver's seat. And I decided, well, I'm just going to run down this bluff, get the camera off the tree, put it in my little water seal box, and bring it back up, which is what I did. And all the time down there, this is a short walk. Not really a problem. Got to the game cam, saw it had snapped off 3 or 4 shots. Just unstrapped it from the tree, put it in the box, started to head up. Pretty much as soon as I turned to go up, I did hear some movement, something moving in the woods along. There were woods going all along this bluff, and it was over towards this gully. I had noted this gully before that was probably at the base of the bluff where the water line is. It's probably about 50 feet away from where the path comes out. It kind of goes zigzagging up and down as you come up. And so as you get closer to the top of the bluff, it probably gets closer to about 80 to 100 feet away. And it sounded like something had moved over in the gully. but it really wasn't identifiable, and it really wasn't anything odd. There was no huge thumping noise like anything heavy moving. And just heard that, wasn't really too weirded out by it, but decided I'd better get up to the top. And as I got up to the top, I could hear voices that were not connected with this. They were the voices of apparently some fishermen who were on the lake or headed towards the lake underneath the bridge. The lake has a lot of tributaries and zigzags. It's a very large place. And I could hear what sounded like probably two men talking on a boat, just drifting towards the bridge. And as I got to the top, didn't feel anything odd, really. Decided to go ahead and put the camera away and unlock the back. I had left I'd locked the car, but I'd left the windows partially down because of all the fog and the moisture building up. I left the windows partially down in the front, but I had unlocked the back. Put the camera in, and as I'm stepping back to push down the door, I smelled something. And it was that sort of classic smell that many people describe, the sort of wet dog, really, really heavy, musky, wet animal smell. And I thought, well, that's odd, and it's also disturbing, and it's also kind of cliche that I'm smelling something like this. Here I'm looking for Bigfoot, and I'm smelling something very funny like this. And I stepped back away from the car several feet, and I couldn't smell it. And when I stepped forward again, I could smell it. And the wind was blowing slightly from my right, and I looked down this gully area that runs along the road, which runs to the bridge, and it's still pretty heavy with fog down in this area. And I saw something stand up. And it was
now, before you go on with that, that beeping we're hearing, does that have anything to do with you?
That is just my IV running out, which I'm going to call and let them know.
All right.
But that's me.
We just want to make sure nobody's in there dying on your phone.
No, it's my antibiotics. My heart rate's fine.
Okay.
I'll just call them right now. Hang on.
All right.
They'll answer in a second. They've got me on this like 30 minute drip.
Happy?
Yeah, my IV's running out.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
This
We
is
got
drama.
that
Drama.
Right.
Anyway, literally something stood up. There was this movement, and something just rose out of the mist, and it seemed to stand just straight up, like no real effort, just rising. It was kind of an odd movement, and I just stared at it, and for all accounts, it was essentially a Bigfoot. Its coloration was really odd in that it would seem to be predominantly in the chest area, a gray, almost a blue-gray, with, like I said, as it got out towards the arms and out to the chest area, it ran to a reddish-brown, and it was kind of a lighter reddish-brown. A lot of people, since then, I've heard describe it as, pine needle color.
Yeah.
And it's well, the oddest thing, I'm just staring at it, and I'm going through a catalog sort of in my mind. Even though I'm out here supposedly looking for Bigfoot, it's one of those things you get used to the idea that you're not going to see something, and then when you do, it's almost like you have a strange alternate reaction where you're trying to catalog what you're seeing because it can't possibly be what you think you might be out here looking for.
Right.
And I'm flipping through a catalog going, well, it's not any kind of bear. It's not any kind of human being. It's, as somebody I think mentioned in a response, it looks kind of like a gibbon, the coloration and the scale of the pattern. And that kind of hit my mind. And I thought, well, it's tall and it's big. And the idea that there's some kind of ape loose is just as far out as there being something like a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. It's just, why would there be something like that out here? When
and how could it be that big?
And how could it be that big? And I as it turns out, there's this accumulated history of many years of sightings of this thing in the area. So there it stands.
And what you mean by that? Let's explain that to the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
What you mean by that is that people have described the same coloration pattern on some of their sightings over the years.
Yeah,
so,
I later found out there's a report going all the way back to 1953, which is from this area, where two boys saw Bigfoot actually using pieces of wood as tools, digging in a backyard. It was driving a piece of wood into the ground with another and turning up the ground. And when they described its coloration, it was the same creature for all intents and purposes. It had the gray skin and the brown outer areas and a black face. And that's what I was seeing. And as I said in the report, the head was so low from where I was standing, it looked almost at first as if it had no head. I'm looking down, and its head is so low, it's almost like it's coming out of the top of the chest area instead of sitting on top of the chest. It's coming out from the front. And it's got very dark skin, and it has got sort of a ruff of lighter fur or hair around it. It's a lighter gray. But it's so dark that I really can't make any real features out, and I don't see any whites of any eyes or anything. And it had a nose that was more of a flat, bulbous human type of nose. It was not like any kind of a flat ape nose or any kind of a gorilla nose. And I'm just standing there staring. And that's when I got a second, literally it's kind of a second wind, another odor came through. And it was much more intense. And this was that sort of decay that people talk about a lot, and very concentrated. Nothing skunky about it. I've never smelled anything like that in relationship to these things. But this was just a very intense, nauseating, and almost directed sort of smell. It almost felt like a spray of some sort was headed my way. And that had, like I said, an immediate effect on me, which went beyond, the rational. My normal reaction to seeing something like that would be awe and amazement, and what I see, I believe, and I want to see more. And at that point, I wanted to see nothing more. I just wanted to turn and get away. There was this very intense wave of danger, I guess, coming off of it. And stepped back and slammed the door. And when I did that, it cut loose with a yell. And the yell was not a high-pitched sort of scream or howl. It was very low, very guttural, very loud, but really much on the low end. And like I guess I described it as it sort of burbled up out of the thing, and it was very primal and very angry sounding. And it cuts loose with that, and that combined with the smell was enough for me to just say, well, I'm gonna leave. I can't be here. It's an extremely bad idea to be standing where I'm at, and it is at that point beginning to move forward. Now, I estimated at that point to be probably like 75 to 80 feet away, and it did start to move forward. And I didn't see feet. I didn't see really anything much below the knees. When it brought its arms up, they were obviously very long. The hands I couldn't see much of. They were dark. I just kind of like the face, but it had that odd, exaggerated, but yet kind of graceful way of moving. But it was obviously keeping its up. They sort of swept forward. Yeah. They weren't swinging at this point. When he looked at me, it's funny. You hear the stories about swinging arms. He was almost dead still when I first saw it. And well, when it started to step forward, it swung. And it kind of an exaggerated swing, but it was not going that fast, and it was keeping up this noise. And when it started to come forward, that's when I really started to just feel this intense wave of just kind of senseless terror, and was going to get out and went around to get in the other side of the car, and I got to unlock the door. And when it's out of sight, it started making another kind of noise.
Yeah, this is the part that I'm pretty interested in, that other noise it makes. It's a really low type noise.
Yeah, hang on just a second.
Sure.
When I get around the other side of the car, it is like I'm being talked to. That was the impression I got. It's talking to me. It's yelling at me. It's literally scolding me, and it feels like it's speaking to me in a language. And only it's not a language I understand, and it's not telepathy. It's not that kind of a situation where I'm hearing words. They're simply emotional reactions, and the emotional reactions are really intense. And I felt like, as I've said, I felt ashamed to be there, and that was such an odd feeling that I was ashamed. I'd been caught at something I shouldn't have been doing. And there was that feeling of, why are you here? Why are you bothering me? But these weren't literal questions or feelings. It was just like, I should have left well enough alone, and I'm in trouble. And this was such an intense feeling that I started to just sort of shut down. Like I always say, that's the most difficult part to recount, is that it's not when I first see something like this that sticks in my mind. It's this odd moment when I'm on the other side of the car. And like I said, I was just, you felt like a trapped rabbit or something.
Right.
And I just was just literally kind of just shutting down. And you hear about responses like that in game animals, like rabbits and things, where they just go quiet and lie down. And I felt almost like at that point, like I said, I literally felt something in me trying to make me lie down, bending me kind of over, literally at the waist. And part of that was the smell, because it was very nauseating, and part of it, I'm sure, was the raw fear, but part of it was also just this emotional content that I couldn't plug into anything, and I'm just doubling over, and like we said, I'm shutting down, and my rational mind is still there functioning, and it basically is saying, you can't do this because it's coming towards you. And if you just curl up and lie here on the ground or something, if it comes around the back of the car, it's going to do whatever it wants. And it's not happy. And there was that came to mind immediately, but then that was almost defeated almost as quickly by the impulse to just go ahead and lie down. Just go ahead and lie down. And finally I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. So got the car door open, got in the car, and that was the surprising moment when I got in the car and looked. It had not moved pretty much from where it had been when I went around the car. It had, it started walking, and where I saw it when I went around the car, it was still there. It had stopped as well, and apparently it just started this bellowing, yelling sound. The closest thing I can describe that to, I think I mentioned there was a case where there were some hunters in West Virginia several years ago who the guy heard some speech patterns, and he described it as a record being played backwards. Yeah. And there are the Sierra Sounds recordings. I have heard those, and there are certain aspects, I guess you can say, of some of those recordings that kind of rang similar. It was just the weird inflection, the way in which this was coming out. It was vocal. It was more like a voice on a really low end, and it was, in a way, I guess you could say it was kind of a weird Asian inflection, in that it didn't follow the way we normally speak. It had ups and downs that were opposite from what we do, and that's the kind of sound that was coming out of it. But it was very forced. It was very very powerful noise, and I did feel a certain resonance in me when I heard those sounds. I could feel it in my chest. And like we talked before about infrasound and certain other animals, and I have been privileged to spend a lot of time with other animals, and I have felt those same kind of experiences with tigers, lions, and other things. And the same kind of trigger does kick in, but this was very, very different in that it was there's something about something that's close to being a human, close to being a man. That somehow makes this far more terrifying.
Yeah, I think it probably that's the three things that go together. First, there is the infrasound component, and you're probably the best guy to tell us about that because you felt that from the big cats, and you felt it from this guy. Mm-hmm. Then there's the fear component, which he's a big, scary-looking guy that's not supposed to exist. So of course he terrifies us when we see him. But then the last thing I think we should add in is that there's also a pheromone component, which acts on us in another way. So I think all three of those things together are like a magic cocktail.
They are. That's how I felt. It's just that this is a very powerful defense. You can say that he was being offensive. It was like an attack, but I don't feel it was. I think it was a lot of purely defensive stuff. And these things seem so specifically tailored to work on the human nervous system that I do believe that that's an evolved trait. I think it's something that they've evolved to defend themselves and use on a regular basis. And it wasn't until the first time we interviewed, when I was able to kind of break it down like we're doing now, that I started to see there was kind of a give and take in what we were doing. My first recollections are just from my point of view, and my point of view is I'm pretty much scared out of my mind, and I'm just going to run and get away from this thing. But when we started breaking it down, I realized, well, there was give and take. It would appear, and then it made a noise, and then I responded, and then it kind of came forward, and then it couldn't see me, so it stopped. And so by the time I got in the car, turned around, looked back towards it, it was pretty much right where it had been. And there's still just raw panic going on because of all this. And started the car, and it started to move forward again. And I had to back up towards where it was going to get out of this turnaround. And so that was still a very scary prospect. But I looked down and I saw that I had the gun, and reached down and pulled it out of the holster. That window was halfway down where I had left it because of the condensation. So it was still coming towards the car, and I decided to put the gun outside the window and fire a couple shots. I wasn't going to shoot it, but I just wanted it to know I had a gun. Right. And I wanted it to stop, and that's what I did. I popped off 2 shots pretty rapidly, kind of towards this. There's a dirty, woody pile in this area, and at that point, it did just pull up and stop. And so it obviously recognized what that was.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much at that point. Like I said before, I tried to be somewhat sensible, and I looked out the window at it. I had to lean forward because I had to lean forward to fire. And I looked out the window, and I looked at it standing there. And by this time, it was probably 30, 35 feet away. And I could kind of gauge where it was standing in relationship to the guardrail and the car, and how far it was below the top of my window, which was about 2 inches. And just to kind of get an idea of just how big it was, and it did seem very big. It didn't seem very wide uniformly wide down its body, like a Patterson-type creature, but across the shoulders it was enormous. It was close to 4 feet. It seemed thin, as it tapered down towards the waist. I never got to see a cross-section of it, so I don't know just exactly how wide or barrel-shaped or what it was. And that's when I decided, well, I can get out of here. And I reached down, and I had the gun in my hand, but I had my finger off the trigger. But to shift down in the element, the shifter's up high on the dash, and you have to push in. And I pushed in with my thumb, and wasn't my index finger, but my second finger comes down and hits the trigger, and end up putting a nice round right through the dash above the shifter, which it was already loud, firing out. Yeah. This is a snub-nosed 357. It was already loud firing out the window, but at that point I was firing off a 357 inside a big metal box, and my driver's side window had already been up, and so it was like just an instant, just concussion, bang, which just served to scare me, I guess, even more. And didn't stop the car, had it in drive, and just took off. And it was right below the shifter and right above where the subwoofer is, and just took off down the road. I peeled out. You could probably still see my tire tracks in there, and headed kind of in the wrong direction, away from where I was supposed to be going, and ended up turning around at a church not too far from there, and calming down. And realizing what I'd seen, as I drove off, I was looking, and I didn't see it cross the road, but I had the feeling that it wanted to get across the road, right. And that was its entire intention. The time I had been there was that it had wanted to get across that road, and I was simply kind of in the way, and or the fact that I heard those fishermen, and that maybe this thing felt kind of hemmed in.
That's kind of the way I thought about it, too. If the fishermen, it obviously would have heard those, too. It might have felt trapped. You're on one side, the fishermen on the other side, so that's why it had to come out and show itself. Yeah, it had to choose a route, and that was the route back to where it wanted to be. And so I had to pass back through there, and I did slow down on the way back through and didn't see it. I could still smell it because I had the windows down, and like I said, didn't tarry, just moved on out. And the whole thing in the telling is it takes some time, but the entire event, probably 3-4 minutes max, not even that long maybe. But how things compress when they get exciting. Yeah. And I could tell there were issues already with the car on the way back, that I couldn't get the door lock or anything to work on that side, and I actually was feeling sick, and I actually did have to pull over at a Quick Mart, and actually was sick at the Quick Mart, and got home, and it was a whole other world of experience trying to explain to your family what was going on.
I shot my car.
I shot my car because so I mostly just waved them off, saying, go to the reunions. I'll take care of it. And I had to call a car hauler, and because what it turned out happened is I had ended up severing wiring harnesses all down that one side. And when I went to check on it, I actually ended up pulling the last of the harness apart. And after that, the car wouldn't start. It would just turn over. So it had to be hauled all the way back to Louisville, Kentucky, and taken care of there.
I'm sure you thought about this, but if the car had suffered enough damage for it to not move after that gunshot, now what do you think was going to happen next?
Now, I think without all the fear components, and without all the completely irrational behavior on my part, I think he would have crossed the road and gone home wherever he was headed.
Right. That's kind of my thinking too.
Or he might have just given me a good push in the car or something. But I don't. I don't think.
Get on your way.
Yeah.
Even get a rolling start.
I really don't now. When I think about it, I said to you before, it's almost comical in a way because I think it just wanted to get home. I think you do experience a lot of bluff with these creatures. I don't think they're generally out to kill anyone unless you push things really to the limit. And
well, that behavior you described is definitely not, it's not aggressive. It's, you would call that, bluff is a good word. He's trying to scare you to make you leave.
Yeah, it's a good.
But he's not. He could have 3 steps. He could have been over there and ripping your arms out of the sockets. If that's
sure,
what
you can. Anything that big and that strong can punch out a windshield and kill anyone it wants. And I just don't think it's interested in that.
Right.
I did go back about almost a month later, and except we did do some measurements, and they're all on your blog. But based on what I could recall, parking in pretty much exactly the same spot, I did get a height of about 7'4", 7.5 feet tall. And where I thought it had just sort of risen up, kind of mysteriously, is actually a spot where the gully that comes up the hill, you have to take a big step to get up into the ditch, and I think that's precisely what it did. It did take a big step, and when it did, that's when it just popped up above the fog. And
now some people
did it fairly slowly.
Yeah, some people have said that they think that it wasn't really that its head was coming out of its chest, but that it had lowered its head to go into an aggressive stance.
And that's very possible, because I never saw it from the side.
That fit with what you saw? You didn't see it from the side, so you can't really say. Because it's kind of weird to think of his head being all the way down that low, but you can sort of see it if he's leaning forward. That's
true, and he could have been leaning forward, and could have been leaning far forward. I never got any kind of other viewpoint other than pretty much straight on. And,
so if he was leaning forward, then he would have been a little taller.
Oh yeah, it would have been quite a bit taller. I would think it would be at least 8 feet tall. If it was leaning in, had the head low, it would be a lot taller.
I tell you what, that is one heck of an experience, Dave. I mean, like I say, when I read that, and DB's such a good writer, so he's really good at expressing things.
He is.
Thank you.
I mean, I just, like I say, I was late for work. I mean, it was just one of the most intriguing stories I'd ever read. So, my hat's off to you, man. that was a heck of a sighting.
Well, thank you. I was, unlucky and lucky enough to, I guess, encounter something really, really mysterious. And
I guess it all depends on who you're talking to, because some people say they're not lucky.
Yeah. Well, I didn't feel lucky at all that morning. I felt really doomed. Just really in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
And it overrode, like I said, any sense of trying to document, any sense of trying to, do much of anything but get away.
Right.
But it proved a point about that area. That area has been, I won't say a hotbed, because they don't fall one right after the other, but there are stories in that area that go way, way, way back. And in subsequent research, I got a new Kentucky Atlas and started to. I think I went through several books, several sighting histories and websites and things, and I started to plug all these sightings in. And there are probably 20 or 30 that are in this area, and when you plot these things out on a map, you start to get an almost concentric circle based on this lake. Yeah. And almost all of them, without exception, are located near a creek tributary that leads to this area. So the old Boggy Creek, story about they always follow the creeks, that really seems to be the case, because like I said, the stories as far kind of northeast as Danville, where the kids saw the thing digging, that was near a creek. And if you want to take it just a few miles further up, maybe 10 miles or so, you get way back in history. I think one of the first Kentucky reports is from the 1850s about a wild man that was seen in an area that was supposedly living in a cave, and that is very close to this region. So.
Yeah.
All right, let me.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Hey, DB, let me get to these calls. I've got about.
Well, you know what? How about we take our break first? Somebody just said they got to go to the bathroom. I think it's one of your callers, actually. So
all right.
Let's take our break first. Then we'll come back and pick up the questions from the chat room and then the calls.
All right. We'll get to you guys as soon as we get done with this commercial break. And Dave, that'll give you time to get you a glass of water.
Yeah, I'll be right here. Give me some tea.
Sasquatch Watch Radio. Stay tuned. Don Keating, the Eastern Ohio Bigfoot Investigation Center, and the Tri-State Bigfoot Study Group are proud to announce the return of the world's longest-running Bigfoot Conference to Ohio the weekend of May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2009. The 21st Annual Bigfoot Conference returns to Salt Fork State Park Convention Center and Lodge located in Guernsey County, just outside of Cambridge, Ohio. Festivities for the weekend event kick off May 1st with a meet and greet gathering with guest speakers, fellow researchers, and enthusiasts in the first floor lounge at 8 p.m. Saturday, May 2nd is the date for the 21st Annual Bigfoot Conference to be held in the first floor conference room and will run from 4 to 10 p.m. with an hour break for dinner. This year's tentative guest speaker lineup includes Diane Stocking from Portland, Oregon, Billy Willard from Manassas, Virginia, and from TV's Monster Quest producer Doug Hychek, with additional speakers to be announced. No admission charge is anticipated, however, reserved seating is available for purchase. The three-day event wraps up on Sunday, May 3rd, as Don Keating will host an afternoon guided tour of various sighting and track discovery locations throughout Salt Fork State Park. Special accommodation rates are available for those interested by contacting the Salt Fork State Park Lodge at 740-439-2751 and ask for the Bigfoot Conference Special. Additional information is available by emailing Don Keating at eobic@yahoo.com or by visiting the website at eobic.net. Mark your calendars and make plans now to attend the world's longest-running Bigfoot Conference by coming to the 21st Annual Bigfoot Conference, May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2009, at the Salt Fork State Park in southeastern Ohio.
Welcome back, folks. Hopefully everybody was able to, JC was able to go take his pee break. And let me get to these callers who have been very patiently hanging on the line. First, we'll take the caller from the 419 area code. You're on the air.
Hey, Billy. It's Andy.
Hey, Andy. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing okay.
That's good.
Like I said, that's quite an encounter that Dave had there.
Yeah, it's one of the it's going to be one of my favorites. I've got a few favorites, and that's definitely going to be logged in among one of the favorites that I've heard. So, did you have a question for Dave since we've got him on the line?
Yeah. Has he ever looked? Because where I lived out there in southern Indiana, just like 25 miles from Louisville. Has he ever looked at the what I've called it the Bigfoot corridor from Kentucky all the way up to about middle Indiana? Because you've got Hoosier National Forest that runs from central Indiana down to the Kentucky border, almost, and you've got the little state forest, the little county forestries and the state forestries in between. And it's just like, if he's ever noticed on a map that it looks like there's just like one big swath if you go by the reports and look up through that area.
Yeah, I have seen that. I don't know how far out of Louisville you are. I don't know if you know about Charlestown State Park.
Yeah, I used to live down there in Salem, Indiana. I live in Mansfield, Ohio now. Okay, well, there have been reports as close as Charlestown State Park now of people seeing Bigfoot in that area. And I wouldn't be surprised because, that used to be completely government-controlled land. There was a large ammunition factory in that area for decades and decades, and it's a huge swath of land that runs, 20, 30 miles near the river. And that was all reforested by the government back, I guess, in the 30s. And people have been seeing things up in that area, and it's very wild. And it's hard to say, if I believe in any kind of a migration pattern. I think it all depends on the scenario or the situation. But you've got the Hoosier National Forest, which is gigantic, leading down into those state forests, and then you get to Kentucky. You've got the Daniel Boone National Forest, which is also just massive. And there was a good report out of Daniel Boone last year as well, where there was a sighting by, I think, a BFRO investigator. So you've got this, like I said, it's a huge corridor of forest that's not penetrated much by people. And you combine that with the creek beds and what they call the karst area, all the cave area. I think you've got a pretty ideal environment for these things to live in. And I think it's been that way for pretty much forever in this area. Yeah. Well, that's all I got, Billy.
All right. Well, Indy, are you listening on the line? Do you need me to mute you, or are you?
Yeah, just go ahead and mute me. My internet's down tonight, so I'm just having to call in and listen.
All right, not a problem. I'll just mute you out then. Thanks a lot for calling.
See you Friday.
Yep. This next guest doesn't need any introduction. Mr. Bill Green.
How you doing, Billy and everyone?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Hi. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. That's a very interesting encounter you had there, Dave.
Yes, it was.
Did you find any prints where you had your sighting there, or any other evidence that where the animal might have went, and report this any wild animals or police?
So you're kind of cutting in and out of my connection, but I think you're asking about any other evidence.
Yeah, and he also wants to know about the pictures. You actually drew some pictures, and I put them up on the pictures. Sasquatch.
Yeah.
So if Bill hasn't been there to see those, I know he'd be interested in seeing them.
Yeah, the initial rendering was done by me, and then, like I said, modified when I saw some of Scott Davis's work that really matched the stature of what I saw. But I did find evidence. People talk about stick formations, and we had seen on a return a couple of what you would call X formations in this gully area that wouldn't have been there before, but they certainly were there after what occurred. And the whole idea that there are all these bones there is what's very interesting. And BB has seen some of those pictures, and a lot of these bones are broken. They're not chewed on. There's no teeth marks or anything. A lot of these bones are broken open to get to the marrow, and not too many animals do that. Outside of human beings that I'm aware of. And so we found a lot of bones. Well, I found everything from coyote skulls in this area to fully dressed out. Deer. I think deer do get tossed into this area by taxidermists, and hunters, and things. And I think that's the attraction. I think that's why this thing circuits through that area fairly often, because there's a lot of food available, and no footprints or anything like that.
Oh, you didn't find no footprints after your sighting? Did you go back there to see if you found
No,
any
I've been back a couple of times, and I've never found any impressions, but most of the area is not an area where you could find one. That whole trail is very rocky, and then the whole bluff area is, covered in leaves and wood and grass, and so I've seen nothing like a footprint in there.
Has there been any sightings as of very few months?
I finally was able to establish some contact with locals who didn't want to comment publicly on any of the boards and stuff. There are community boards for these small towns, but I invited them to email me privately, and I had a guy actually not that long ago say there was one in his front yard at 2 a.m. and he was not that far north of this area, where there have been reports by hunters and other people. So especially right now, springtime. Things seem to be
season now. People are probably going to see these animals more now too.
Yeah, I think it's they either come out from where they spend the winter, or they're moving through the area, depending on whatever you believe. But people are seeing them.
So, Billy, what's new in Manassas, Virginia, as far as Sasquatch activity?
Nothing. Nothing. It's been slow here, Bill. We haven't gotten anything in. So
it's gotten too hot now. I bet they're all
it is. It's been hot.
I saw an interesting article at DB in the Anomalous website about Bigfoot and UFOs in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you went on that website today, but
nope, I missed it. That'll teach me.
It was pretty interesting, but Cryptomundo. I was on Cryptomundo today, and Lauren had some interesting articles on there too. But Dave, that was an interesting report that you had and stuff, and I hope someday you could try to get a photo of the creature you saw and stuff, and just keep us updated and stuff.
I certainly will. We are spending a lot of time in that area, and hope to spend a lot this summer and then fall.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, no problem.
We'll see you later. All right. Let me get the caller from as soon as my switchboard comes back. Caller from the 352 area code. You're on the air.
Hey, Bill. It's Dan from Florida. Swamp Rat in the chat room. Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How about you, man?
Hi.
All right. My battery stayed up long enough to finally get on.
Well, we'll let you hurry up and ask him a question then.
Yeah, I only got 3 short ones. One, Dave, I appreciate you being in a hospital bed and everything, giving your recount. I've been glued to my speakers listening to your story there. Very intriguing. Being that your farm is nearby, have you ever tried baiting at your farm, and did you think you were successful?
We found an odd footprint, a few months previous to all this, on the farm that I really could never identify as a big footprint. DB's got a blog about that as well, and it was in this area where all the back fields come together. And I did throw out some apples and things out in that area on a weekend trip, and actually that's when I first got that game cam and put it on a post just a little down the road there where you could see. And I didn't get any hits on anything, which I thought was pretty weird because we do have deer and raccoon and everything else in that area. Nothing was touched those 2 nights, which was it's kind of funny. I thought at least something would come through, but nothing did. I did have a few trips on the camera, but they were basically blank frames. Like I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Like,
yeah.
How close are you to? How close is this to Carter County, Kentucky?
It's not. I know there's the whole thing about Carter Caves in that area, but but this is actually pretty far south central.
Okay.
From Carter.
That was basically it, because the other caller basically took care of the other question for me. And I was just wondering if you were baiting any, and if you were having any success. I tend to use pineapples and marshmallows.
I'm going to try this summer in the farm area, since I said it does run close, and I have heard some, odd cries and vocalizations and things on the farm area. I've never seen anything, but I'm going to try to just sort of leave things out in a more long-term kind of way.
Okay.
But like I said, using a camera, it's getting to be almost impossible.
I've used $50 cameras all the way up to $159 cameras, and I found just the more money you spend on them, the more they suck.
Yeah. the better quality pictures of nothing,
Well, yeah, exactly. I've had them infrared. They're supposed to detect heat, and 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm 20 feet from it, peeing towards it in a pair of shorts, and it never goes off. And but the next morning, it's taking photos of anything and everything. And I found my best bang for the buck actually is these little $50 ones at Walmart. And because I went through a whole list of them at Cabela's, and kept trying them out, sending them back, getting a bigger and better one all year last year, all season while I was out, and I was just highly disappointed.
Yeah.
And all right, I'll get off the line and give another caller a chance. I appreciate you answering my questions. And
sure, thanks for calling.
You're a very good guest. And
thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate it.
Billy tends to have some good guests over here.
Thank you.
Well, this one was thanks to DB. He talked to Dave, and Dave agreed to come on. I was more than happy.
Oh yeah. All right, I'll hang up now.
All right, thanks, Dan.
All right, bye.
And let's see. Let me grab this other caller. Caller from the 970 area code. You're on the air.
Yeah, is that me?
That is you.
Oh, okay. Hey, DB, I just discovered your blog, and it's great. I'm really enjoying it. And, Dave, I really appreciate your articulate description of your encounter. It's just great. And I have a question by the way, my name is Carrie, and I'm in Colorado. I have a question about, you kind of covered this a little bit in the blog on the conceptual shift that you had to go through. You said you lost some sleep and that kind of stuff. I'm wondering, what does it really feel like to go through that paradigm shift where you go from the abstract to the concrete and specific, the difference between believing and knowing? And if you could just describe what that felt like, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, I guess I can try. There's something, so the rawness in the experience is something that you don't expect. I mean, I didn't expect. I didn't expect this emotional impact. I didn't expect this sense of being assaulted. Even though, like I said, we pretty much agreed that really probably wasn't what was happening. I think I told DB once that I'd hoped to see Bigfoot someday. I hoped to see something, but I had expected to see it, through a video camera lens or through a pair of binoculars or down that trail behind that tree. And I didn't expect something to stand up, relatively close to me and be targeting me in an angry way. And I didn't expect to react the way I did. And didn't expect to do really stupid things like shoot my car and try to explain this to people. I really was that day. I was in shock. I was sick a couple of times. I was suffering from the fact that the gun went off in the car, and there was the concussion of that, and my left ear was the hearing in that ear was compromised for a few months. I didn't burst the eardrum, but bruised it, and I didn't have a lot of bad dreams. I did lose sleep, though. It was very hard to sleep because I did replay it more and more in a conscious way. in my mind. But it wasn't one of kind of like abject terror. It was just, that was such a strange experience. It's so strange.
It's like a conceptual shift, right? It's
yeah,
like a shift
well, it was. Even though I believed and always believed in the existence of these kind of creatures, to see something, to finally see something like that, it does change everything. It tends to verify a lot of the things you may have suspected about the world, that it is a far stranger place and a far wilder place than people even understand it to be. I think human beings are so arrogant in their approach to nature and science and everything else. And you encounter something like this, and this creature, it didn't seem like an ape to me. It may have had the physical trappings of something more primitive, but in a way it didn't seem that primitive. It seemed pretty bright, obviously, pretty much in control of things. And I was just sort of inferior at that moment to it.
Do you think you suffered some? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you think you suffered some PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder?
I don't think so. It didn't care, because I think eventually my initial fascination and my initial interest overrode it, and it did start to override it pretty quick. When I got back to town, I did get online immediately and try to dig up some information. I did start trying to do a reconstruction. I tried to kind of go through this in a logical manner. And,
how long do you think it took you before you got back to quote unquote normal? And just your perceptual senses.
I'm not sure if that.
I mean, you're not so stunned feeling, I guess is what I'm asking.
Excuse me, what was that?
You're not quite so stunned by the whole thing.
Yeah, it got out of me within about a month. I went back, and it was kind of a big step to go back, and but I chose a day that was nice and bright and had company, and that helped to go back and relate it more to the reality of things. And going back, I think, helped a lot, and able to walk down and take a look and realize and figure out some clues as to how things did happen that day. It took it less out of the realm of the surreal into the real,
Right. Just another quick question. You mentioned you felt a little inferior. Do you think that these creatures are, obviously they're very, very intelligent, or they wouldn't be able to elude us for so long and so effectively. But do you think on a cognitive level that they're equal, superior? I know it's hard to tell just from a quick encounter, but what did you feel?
It's hard to say that if they're superior, but I think it's very, very different way of thinking and looking at the world. I think they have a very different mindset, I guess. And that's just an impression. Once again, I've got no evidence. You go. It's far more in tune with their environment than we are, and maybe ever have been. And that's about as much as I can say. Okay.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm really enjoying your very, very articulate and intelligent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm really, it's great. It's one of the better ones I've ever listened to. And thanks, Stevie. I really enjoy your blog, and I'll let somebody else on there.
Thanks
you. A lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. See there, DB, you got fans, man.
Yeah.
Fans. I tell you, DB has one. I love reading your blog, man.
Oh, I do too.
I really do.
Well, thank you. If we don't have any more callers, there are still chat room questions.
Yeah, I know, and I wrote a bunch down here. One of them here may get Dave chuckling a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't write down who said that one. Was that JC?
No, it was Wes.
Okay.
Wes wanted to know, what does your nurse look like?
Yeah, do you have a hot nurse?
I have a couple of hot nurses, yeah.
Okay.
There's a big staff. a big staff.
Okay.
But
careful,
yeah.
I think your wife's listening.
Might be.
Busted.
Yeah,
but you've never looked at any of them, right?
But no, and they're not nearly as beautiful as my wife, who looks like Sybil Shepherd.
There you go.
Covered now.
Good save.
Yeah.
Elusive one, I think you already answered this, though. He wanted to know how close you were to it. I think you said about 75 feet.
Physically, when I was outside, yeah. Except by the time I was in the car, he had come up to about, say, 35 feet. But I was in the car by then. That's
pretty close. And then you had to back up into him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was headed. That's.
Let's see. Mike had asked how tall it was. I think you said 7.5 feet.
Yeah, and like I said, if it was leaning forward or anything like that, it may have been much taller.
Right.
I got the impression it was old. It was an older specimen, based on the coloration and then just the way it behaved.
Right. And then the last question I copied down, so if I missed anybody, please retype it in the chat room in capital letters. But the only other question I've seen come across was another question from Elusive One, and he wanted to know if you thought that the smell that you encountered do you think it could be related to something with mange?
Yeah, he was talking about specifically that dead smell, the smell of...
the dead smell? I don't know. I've never smelled mange on anything. I think I told DB this before, is that this was such a concentrated putrescent that it kind of went, I wouldn't say beyond, but it's so different than your standard, well, is there something dead around here smell? And it did evoke this memory that I had from high school. When I was a junior in high school, we were doing a lab and found out my teacher was interested in taxidermy, and there was he had a couple dead birds in the freezer he wanted to take care of, and some of the kids joked about that and said they'd seen a dead dog on the way into school that day, and did he want that too? And he actually called their bluff and said, well, yeah, I'd be interested in working on that in the lab. And he actually dispatched a couple guys to go get this dog down the street, which had been freshly hit, I guess, that morning. Mm-hmm. And they brought it in. And we determined, well, we were doing biology and anatomy, and let's go ahead and try to just, preserve this dog's skull. So we literally removed the head and buried the dog. And our assignment was going to be to basically, strip the skull and preserve it and reconstruct it. And we had a pressure cooker, and we had put it in the pressure cooker and cooked it for a day or two. And then spring break came. And like I said, we're all teenage morons and decided, we'll just go off on spring break. And we didn't take it out of the cooker or anything. We just left it in. And returned, about a week and a half later. And I knew it wasn't going to smell good when I opened the lid, but I was thinking it was cooked. It was sealed. I opened it, and it was one of the most, just awful smells I've ever smelled. And it was very, very, very similar to what came out of this thing. It literally was, it's like I said, like something that just grabs you and slaps you in the face. It's just really unpleasant and clinging, and not like typical decay, just concentrated, distilled decay.
Right.
And if you buy into the idea that, go ahead.
Didn't you say that you were still smelling it, much later on? Like either it was the memory of it, or it might have been clinging to you. You were still smelling it.
Well, yeah, in the car, I could smell it. Like I said, not just when I passed through there, but later, I could still smell it. Mm-hmm. When I was sick at the station, I had to get out and wash out my nostrils too. I just had to get water in there and just get it out, because it was, it was not like a skunk. It was not like it was, kind of sprayed on me, but it literally was like it hung so heavy in the air that it actually clung to things. Uh-huh. And that's how it felt. And I didn't detect it in the car later or anything, but it did have that just really clingy, heavy quality that you associate with something that's sprayed. And like I said, if you buy into the idea that these are like glandular secretions or something, that's possible. And but it was very different, yet the same. It was decay, but for me, very, very different, and evoked a very personal, strong memory. was very, very potent.
Right. Well,
That's something I'd mentioned to DB earlier that he there's always a lot of synchronicity when I'm talking with him, and I know he discussed this book, Man Like Monsters on Trial, just the other day on a posting, and I tend to agree with you about the qualities of that book. But something she noted in that first chapter was the idea that I think it's Wayne Suttles did these interviews with the Coast Salish people years ago. And some of the quotes these people are talking about just they line up so much with what I and other people have experienced. People saying when you see them, it makes you crazy.
Right.
Or that they had some kind of poison which they could throw on a person and make him crazy. Right. Or it can put you to sleep right away. And these are all those odd kind of experiences people tend to have. And it does make me wonder if it's more pheromonal.
That reminds me of something too. I think we have another person right here who's had a similar thing happen. Billy, remember just before your sons had their sighting, you said that you got so disoriented that you sort of had to sit down?
Yeah, I actually laid down.
You laid down?
Yeah, I did. I pretty much laid down sort of in a... I mean, it's sort of embarrassing to talk about, really, but it was kind of like...
Well, that's why we have to put you on the spot.
I know. It's kind of like a fetal position. You just kind of lay down there. But in my mind, I was laying down there to calm myself down and just, or at least that's what I thought I was doing, was calm myself down and actually gather my thoughts, because I couldn't figure out, at that point, I couldn't figure out which way I had come in. I was almost like I was lost or didn't, kind of lost my sense of direction, which anyone that doesn't happen. And JC, don't you dare talk about the time that you supposedly got lost in Salt Fork. I don't want to hear it. He thought I was lost, and I knew the whole time that something wasn't right with our direction. He teases me about that all the time, saying that me and Tom got lost in the woods. But
right.
I simply never lose my sense of direction.
And you had GPS with you too, right?
No, not at that time I didn't. No.
Okay.
No, but see, I had followed the creek in. The creek was on my right side the whole time. But at that point in time, that didn't even register. So I kind of laid down there, and during that time, and it lasted a couple minutes. During that time, I just kind of laid there and kind of calmed myself down and said, and I finally convinced myself. I said, okay, I came in with the creek on my right side, so if I go back out on my left, I'll get out of here. But it took a couple minutes before I thought of that. And then it was at that point that I got up and had went out, and then, of course, that's when my kids had called on the radio that I had and said, Dad, the thing just, and right the moment they told me it started running down the hill, I saw something out of the right side of my vision, my peripheral vision. So... yeah, it's very similar, and that's probably one of the other things that interested me so much in your encounter. Was that very thing. So, and that is a weird feeling. That is something that I had never felt before, and it's something I've never felt since.
Yeah, I felt fear, many times before, in scary sort of situations, but the need to kind of act like an animal and just kind of curl up has never, ever happened to me. It was like I said, it went beyond my kind of, human rational mind, and it was just really basic. It's like, well, if I just curl up and do a ball, maybe it'll just walk away and ignore me.
Right.
And
but
it didn't make much sense.
We had another question a while ago, and I'm hoping he'll explain it in the chat, because I don't know what he's trying to get at, but I'm going to ask it anyway. D-Law wants to know what color your car is.
My car is green.
It's green.
It's kind of it's kiwi green.
Okay.
It's
and D-Law, if you don't mind putting in your chat why you asked that question, because you've kind of got me interested as to why you asked that question. Anyway. Well, we've only got about 5 minutes remaining in the show. If anybody wants to call in at the last minute and make it real quick, the number is 347-237-5070. Again, I'll repeat it. It's 347-237-5070. Do it quick because we only got like 5 minutes left of the show. 4 minutes now. That's all the questions I've seen, DB. So if you've got some more stuff there, you can go right on ahead.
No, that's all the questions that I've seen cross the wire too.
Okay.
We do want to say thanks so much for coming on tonight. You know, you're in the hospital and everything, and you still came on the show, so we really appreciate that.
Well,
and it really has been a great show.
Appreciate it too. I appreciate you asking when you did, and was looking forward to it. And like I said, this is just a little bump in the road. Being in the hospital, I should be out tomorrow. On the mend.
Great.
It was unexpected, but happy to be here.
Well, we're glad you're feeling better. John Cartwright wants me to ask you, when you had your encounter, your sighting of this thing,
mm-hmm.
did you have any ringing in your ears, or did you feel like a shock?
Well, I felt... of course, this is all before the gunplay. I felt when I was, like I said, on the other side of the car, there was this feeling of compression.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like almost like you're being squeezed.
Right.
Everything's kind of pulsing in a way. And I guess you could say, yeah, there was this feeling of, you know, when your ears close up when you're underwater or something like that. It's similar to that, briefly.
Okay.
But, you know, it's hard to say how much of that is shock and how much of that is from an outside source, but I did feel it, and it was very odd.
Right.
And then, of course, after, my ears rang for a long time.
I'm sure.
But
that was with the gunshot, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was from the gunshot.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there was an odd sensation, a lot of physical stuff going on when I was just, you know, having that episode on the other side of the car.
Right.
That I can't really explain any of that.
All right, we got our last minute caller here. Caller, I think you're on a Skype line. You're on the air.
Willard.
That must be Bruce, the creature seeker steak eater.
Jesus. Hey, I heard that the first person who comes up with some sort of evidence at Salt Fork this weekend, they get like a free pulled pork sandwich at the lodge.
I don't know how he comes up with this stuff. I think him and JC talk.
The quick question I actually called about was, so if Dave was familiar with the LBL creature, and if, you know, in his opinion, that's something that has no basis, or if he thinks that there is actually some, you know, a little bit of truth to that there may be some sort of creature of the land between the lakes.
I'm familiar with the stories, and I personally think it's mostly folklore. That's just my opinion. I think it's a lot of modern folklore.
Now, what about the you know, the rumor of that family that was killed in the park back in the 80s? Is that just?
I don't believe it. To be honest, I don't believe that story. I think it's a good story.
Yeah. So you think there's?
But I don't.
Totally fictional, made-up account.
I don't know. I feel like it's not something anyone's going to keep quiet.
Yeah.
An entire family gets murdered by some mysterious creature, and it's managed to be hushed up. I'm just not so sure about that.
Yeah. Have you ever done any squatching in the LBL? I mean, have you ever been through that area?
I haven't. I haven't been in that area. No. Mostly in the south central area of Kentucky.
Before we go off live real quick, I just want to mention to everyone that next week we're going to have the Ohio Conference, what do we want to call it, post-game show. So I'll actually be live in Ohio next Monday And good old DB is just now finding out that he has to run the switchboard.
Oh, great.
Next Monday night, and we'll do a live show from Ohio to kind of recap everything that went on at the Ohio conference. And anyone who's a guest at that conference is more than welcome to call into the show and give us their thoughts. So.
And Willard's bringing like a keg, actually. We're going to tap a keg at that event. Look, drop on by.
Oh, goodness. And Bruce, he'll just pop a keg in a bottle of A1. So. Oh, man. I tell you. Y'all are something else.
It should be a good conference, don't you think, Bill?
Yeah, I think it'll be a great conference. I'm actually looking forward to not only meeting the lovely Diane Stocking, but, and no, I'm not flirting with her, JC. Just calm down, chill out. And then, of course, High Check. I've been really wanting to meet High Check as well, so I look forward to that.
Are you speaking, Billy? You're speaking at that conference, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not the crowd drawer, okay? That'll be High Check. So.
Well, if my chair malfunctions, please, don't make a big thing of it, like at the PA conference.
Oh, believe me, we'll make absolutely certain you got the best chair in the house. So, yeah, just so that Dave can get in on that joke, Dave, I went to the East Coast conference last year, and I was up actually speaking, and Bruce was sitting there in his chair, and it literally collapsed during my speech, and it was so funny, and I was for a loss of words when it happened because he had gotten the crowd's entire attention.
Mm-hmm.
That I decided I'd make a comment, and I just told him, I said, Bruce, I said, I told you not to eat that other hot dog. And embarrassed him in front of what, 500-600 people, or I don't know.
Always good. Always
he actually
good.
stopped his presentation, Dave, and made it a point to. And I'm embarrassed enough because I'm now sitting on the floor in front of like 500 people, and he has to like stop his presentation and make a big deal about it. So that was thank you very much, Billy. That was very.
You're welcome.
That was a pleasant experience. Thanks.
You got to seize that moment when you can. You got to take advantage of things like that.
That's right. That helped my presentation.
It was unforgettable.
It got it lively. Well, thanks for calling, Bruce.
You're welcome. Take care.
Always a pleasure. All right, DB. Well, we've had another exciting show. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time in the hospital and being on the show and telling us
you're very welcome.
Your experience, because it's very enjoyable.
Looking forward to it. I really enjoyed it as well.
And certainly keep us up to date on, when you get better and you get back out there and get to looking around. Certainly keep us up to date with what's going on out there. We would love it. Love to hear it.
Yeah, we've been back another time and been across the road. Mm-hmm. And there are interesting things across the road. So I intend to spend some time out there early summer and see if we can see anything.
Very good. All right, DB, looks like we've wrapped up another one, buddy.
Yep.
And
they just keep happening.
Yep. Thank you, DB, for getting Dave on. And folks, we thank everyone who listened tonight. As always, if it wasn't for you all, we wouldn't have a show. We wouldn't have nobody to talk to. So we appreciate each and every one of you. Dave, thanks, and get better soon.
Appreciate it. I'll talk to you all soon.
All right. Thanks so much. And
bye-bye.
We will see everyone next week. DB, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
A legend silently stalks the forest around the world, leaving giant man-like footprints in its wake. Skeptics scoff, while the true believers search for the answers, and those who have seen it will never forget. Monday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. Blog Talk Radio. Billy Willard and the Blog Squatcher present Sasquatch Watch Radio. Your hosts Billy Willard and Dee Donlin bring you 60 minutes of the latest news and information, newly discovered evidence, and interviews with those searching for the truth and those who have seen it. Do you believe? Want to know the truth? It's out there waiting. Monday nights, 9 p.m. Blog Talk Radio. Sasquatch Watch Radio. Sit down, hold on tight, get ready, because it is about to go down. blogtalkradio.com/Sasquatch Watch Radio.